Hello everyone and welcome back to the next installment of our 10.1 Raid Guide previews, proudly presented by Kingston FURY. This is Crazy Puck from Method, and today we'll show you how to defeat the Forgotten Experiments encounter in Heroic Aberrus. Please keep in mind that everything in this video is from PTR testing, and it's possible Blizzard altered the encounter in some way since the final testing. If that happens, we'll release an updated video after the fights are live. This is a 3-phase encounter with a different boss to fight in each phase. When one boss dies, the next comes down and the new phase begins. You'll want to hold Lust for phase 2 as that boss has an ability that carries over to phase 3 and you want to minimize this as much as possible. Depending how quickly you kill the phase 1 boss, you may also want to hold off using any DPS cooldowns during phase 1 so you have them available during Lust in phase 2. Let's jump right in. For starters, each one of the bosses has the same tank smack ability called Infused Strikes, applying a stacking dot that deals arcane damage. The stacks are permanent, but removed if you run into another player that has Infused Strike stacks. When the debuffs are removed, they explode, dealing raid-wide damage and applying a dot to everybody that lasts 20 seconds. This dot can also stack on the raid, so it's important for the tanks to be careful when they remove their debuff that they don't refresh the raid-wide dot. You'll want to tank swap around 7-ish stacks and only clear when the raid does not already have the dot. In phase 1, you'll fight Neldris, a big buff dragonkin. She'll cast Massive Slam, which is a large frontal, so don't stand in it. Bellowing Roar is a raid-wide AoE that deals fall-off damage. This puts a super obvious circle around her, so run away when she's casting this and make sure you're out of the circle. Her last ability is Rending Charge. She'll mark several random players, then charge at them. Anyone hit by her charge takes a large chunk of damage and gets a dot for 30 seconds that can stack. You'll want to put down raid markers and have the marked players each run to one of these raid markers. Everybody else should move away from that area so they don't get hit. When Neldris dies, Thadrian replaces her and starts phase 2. This is the most important phase, and we recommend you use Bloodlust here and have all DPS cooldowns available. The mechanic that makes this phase dangerous is Unstable Essence. The boss will debuff a random player with this, which deals taking damage every 2 seconds and grows in intensity over time. This can be dispelled, and when it's removed, it'll drop a large circle on the ground. Don't stand in the circle, it explodes. You'll want to dispel when the debuff is somewhere between 6 and 8 stacks, as at that point it really starts to hurt. After the explosion, an ad called an Erratic Remnant will spawn at that location, and the debuff will then jump to a new player. These ads periodically blast the entire raid for mild damage and need to be killed as soon as possible. Move the boss on top of the ad for cleave so it dies faster. The Unstable Essence debuff never truly disappears, since it just keeps jumping around. Additionally, they do persist into phase 3, which is why it's so important to blast through this phase. The longer phase 2 takes, the more debuffs you'll have, which means the more ads you have and the more damage your raid takes, both in phase 2 and also in phase 3. All of this is bad stuff, so just nuke really hard here. Thadrian's other abilities are much less impactful. Volatile Spew throws swirlies on the ground, don't eat exploding swirlies. The boss will periodically channel Violent Eruption for 8 seconds, dealing moderate raid-wide damage every second. Any living Erratic Remnant ads will also explode for ticking raid-wide damage during this, so it's important to try to ensure that all of the ads are dead before the Violent Eruption begins. If you have 2 or more ads up during the eruption, you'll probably just end up wiping. Use healing cooldowns during the eruption to try to keep everybody stable. Once Thadrian dies, Rionthus comes down to fight you for phase 3. He's basically a really strong Devastation Evoker and uses Evoker abilities at you. He'll use Deep Breath, flying in the air and breathing fire down at you. This deals way more damage than what your own Evoker players do, so make sure you don't get hit. Disintegrate will nuke several players for Spell Frost damage over 3 seconds. When this ends, the affected players get a 16-second debuff. While debuffed, you're slowed by 30% and you pulse damage every second to anybody within 5 yards of you. Make sure to spread out and don't stand on top of your damage pulsing friends. Temporal Anomaly will create an orb that tries to reach the boss. If it reaches him, he gets a shield for 10% of his health. That's bad. Fortunately, any player can run into the orb and bounce it away, but doing so deals mild damage to you. You'll want to assign relatively tanky range DPS to just keep bouncing the ball away. If you get a second ball, just send a different ranged out to bounce that one. While you're dealing with the boss's evoker abilities, the unstable essence debuffs do still exist. When they're dispelled, you will continue getting the erratic remnant adds. The easiest way to deal with this in phase 3 is to have a priest in your raid. Have a raid marker somewhere in the room as an assigned stack point. When the unstable essence stacks start getting too high, have all affected players run to the mark and have a priest cast mass dispel. This will cause all of the adds to spawn stacked up, so you'll then want to move the boss on top of them and just turbo cleave everything down. Don't get breathed on, stay away from people with circles, and finish off this evoker to collect your loot. If you enjoyed this guide, remember to like it and make sure you're subscribed to the channel to catch all of our previews, guides, kill videos, and more. A big thank you again to Kingston FURY for making guides like these possible. From everyone here at Method, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.